The acrid smell of bleach hung heavy in the air, mingling with a more sinister odor that no amount of cleaning products could mask. Detective Sarah Reeves stood at the entrance of the expansive garage, her experienced eyes taking in the scene before her. A large tarp lay crumpled in the corner, dark stains seeping through its blue plastic surface. Two figures huddled nearby, their wrists bound behind their backs, faces etched with a mixture of fear and defiance. Sarah's partner, Detective Mike Holloway, approached, his face grim. "You're not going to believe this, Sarah," he said, his voice low. "The girl, she's one of them, Emily Smith. The other victims, her family." Sarah's eyes widened, her gaze shifting to the young woman on the garage floor. Emily Smith, barely 19, her blonde hair matted with what looked suspiciously like blood, stared back with cold, empty eyes. Beside her, a young man, later identified as her boyfriend, Jason Morrow, seemed to be fighting back tears. As Sarah stepped further into the garage, the full weight of the situation hit her. This wasn't just another crime scene. This was the beginning of a story that would shock the nation, a tale of greed, betrayal, and the darkest depths of human nature. Little did she know, she was about to uncover a plot so chilling it would haunt her for years to come. The Smith family was the epitome of the American dream. To the outside world, they were picture perfect, successful, attractive, and seemingly without a care in the world. Their sprawling two-story home in the affluent suburb of Oak Ridge, just outside of Chicago, was the envy of the neighborhood. Manicured lawns, a three-car garage, and a backyard pool completed the image of suburban bliss. Robert Smith, the patriarch of the family, was a respected cardiothoracic surgeon at Chicago Memorial Hospital. His wife, Catherine, balanced her time between managing a successful interior design business and various charitable endeavors. Their eldest daughter, Emily, had just finished her freshman year at Northwestern University, where she was studying business with dreams of following in her mother's entrepreneurial footsteps. 16-year-old Ethan was the star quarterback of his high school football team, already fielding interest from college scouts. And then there was little Sophia, the baby of the family at 12 years old, a budding violin prodigy with a smile that could melt hearts. Neighbors would later recall the Smiths as the ideal family, always ready with a friendly wave, their home the center of community gatherings and holiday parties. "They were the kind of people you aspired to be," said Linda Thompson, who lived across the street. Robert and Catherine were so in love, even after all these years. And those kids, so polite, so accomplished. It was like they stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting. But as with many picture-perfect facades, cracks lurked beneath the surface. Cracks that would eventually splinter and shatter, revealing a darkness that no one could have imagined. Emily Smith had always been the apple of her parents' eye. From a young age, she displayed a sharp intellect and a drive that both impressed and slightly unnerved those around her. While other children were content with participation trophies, Emily demanded excellence from herself in everything she did. Emily was intense, recalled her high school guidance counselor, Barbara Winters. She had this laser focus on success. It wasn't just about good grades. She wanted to be the best at everything. Sometimes I worried it was too much pressure for a teenager. But Emily seemed to thrive under pressure. She graduated as valedictorian, captain of the debate team, and president of the student council. Her acceptance to Northwestern's prestigious Kellogg School of Management came as no surprise to anyone who knew her. It was during her senior year of high school that Emily met Jason Morrow. Unlike Emily, Jason came from a working-class background. His father was a mechanic, his mother a waitress at a local diner. Jason was smart but unmotivated, coasting through school on natural talent rather than hard work. Jason was this classic bad boy type, said Melissa Chen, Emily's best friend since childhood. "We all thought it was just a phase, you know? The good girl rebelling a little before college. But Emily, she changed when she was with him. It was like he brought out a different side of her. That different side was one that Emily had always kept carefully hidden from the world. Behind the accolades and the perfect smile, Emily harbored a deep-seated resentment. She felt suffocated by her parents' expectations, trapped in a life that had been meticulously planned out for her since birth. "I remember this one time," Melissa continued, her voice dropping to a whisper as if she was sharing a dark secret. Emily told me she sometimes wished her family would just disappear, that she could start over, be anyone she wanted to be. I thought she was just stressed about college applications. I never imagined. Melissa's voice trailed off, her eyes filling with tears as she recalled the conversation that would later haunt her dreams. As Emily's relationship with Jason deepened, those around her began to notice subtle changes. Her impeccable grades slipped slightly. She became more withdrawn from family activities. But to Robert and Catherine Smith, this was simply their daughter asserting her independence before leaving for college. They had no idea that behind closed doors, Emily and Jason were hatching a plan that would destroy everything they held dear. The summer before Emily was set to leave for Northwestern was a pivotal time. On the surface, it looked like any other summer in the Smith household. Ethan was at football camp, Sophia was practicing her violin for hours each day, and Emily was ostensibly preparing for college. But in reality, Emily was spending most of her time with Jason, their relationship intensifying in the face of their impending separation. It was during these long, lazy summer days that the first seeds of their terrible plan were sown. "I can't stand the thought of leaving you," Emily said one afternoon as they lay by her family's pool. Her parents were at work, Sophia was at music lessons, and they had the house to themselves. Jason propped himself up on one elbow, his eyes roving over Emily's bikini-clad form. "So don't go," he said simply. "We could run away together. Start a new life somewhere else." Emily laughed, but there was a bitter edge to it. "With what money, Jason? My parents would cut me off in a heartbeat if I tried to leave school." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of the pool water. Then Jason spoke, his voice low and serious. "What if they weren't around to cut you off?" Emily sat up, her eyes meeting Jason's. In that moment, something passed between them, a spark of understanding, a shared darkness that had been simmering beneath the surface of their relationship. "What are you saying?" Emily asked, but her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Jason sat up too, leaning in close. "I'm saying, what if something happened to them? All of them. You're the oldest. You'd inherit everything." Emily's mind raced. She thought about the life insurance policies her father was always updating, ensuring his family would be taken care of if anything happened to him. She thought about the trust funds set up for each of the children, accessible only upon the death of both parents. She thought about the freedom that kind of money could buy. "It would have to be all of them," she said slowly, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "Mom, Dad, Ethan, Sophia. Otherwise, it would look suspicious." Jason nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We could do it," he said, "together. And then we'd be set for life. No more expectations, no more pressure. Just you and me, babe." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the backyard, Emily and Jason began to plan. What started as an idle fantasy quickly took shape, becoming more real with each passing minute. They discussed methods, alibis, how to make it look like an accident. Neither of them fully realized in that moment the magnitude of what they were considering. They were young, in love, and drunk on the intoxicating combination of power and possibility. The lives they were so casually discussing ending were abstract concepts to them, obstacles to be removed rather than flesh and blood human beings. As Emily went inside to prepare dinner for her family, she felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in her life, she felt truly in control of her destiny. She had no way of knowing that this newfound sense of control was an illusion, one that would come crashing down around her in the most devastating way possible. Over the next few weeks, what had started as a dark fantasy began to solidify into a concrete plan. Emily and Jason met regularly, often under the guise of Emily needing help with her summer job at a local bookstore. In reality, they were meticulously plotting the demise of the Smith family. "We need to make it look like an accident," Emily insisted during one of their clandestine meetings. They were sitting in Jason's beat-up Chevy, parked in a secluded spot overlooking the city. A fire, maybe, or a gas leak. Jason shook his head. "Too risky. What if someone survives? We need to be sure." They debated various methods, weighing the pros and cons of each with a detachment that would have chilled anyone who overheard them. Finally, they settled on a plan: They would stage a home invasion gone wrong. "It's perfect," Jason said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "We'll make it look like burglars broke in, things got out of hand, and they had to eliminate the witnesses." Emily nodded slowly, her mind racing. "We'll need to stage it carefully, make sure there's evidence of a break-in, and we'll need alibis for that night." As they hammered out the details, Emily found herself slipping into a strange, detached state of mind. It was as if she was watching someone else plan these horrific acts, not actively participating herself. This dissociation allowed her to approach the plan with a cold, calculating efficiency that surprised even Jason. "You're really something. You know that?" he said one evening as they finalized the timeline for their gruesome plot. "I've never met anyone like you." Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Is that a good thing?" Jason pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "It's a great thing. We're going to have an amazing life together, babe. Just you wait." As the day of reckoning drew nearer, Emily found herself becoming increasingly withdrawn from her family. She avoided family dinners when she could, begging off with excuses about college preparation or plans with friends. When she did interact with her parents and siblings, it was with a forced cheerfulness that didn't quite mask the underlying tension. Catherine noticed the change in her daughter's behavior and attempted to bridge the growing gap. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked one evening, finding Emily alone in her room. "You seem distant lately." For a brief moment, Emily felt a flicker of doubt. She looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw the love and concern in her eyes. But then she remembered all the times that love had felt suffocating, all the expectations and pressures that came with being a Smith. She steeled herself, pushing down the momentary weakness. "I'm fine, Mom," she said, forcing a smile. "Just nervous about college, I guess." Catherine sat on the edge of Emily's bed, reaching out to smooth her daughter's hair. "You know we're all so proud of you, don't you? Your father and I, we only want what's best for you. We love you so much." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. For a split second, she considered confessing everything, throwing herself on her mother's mercy. But the moment passed, and she simply nodded, unable to trust her voice. As Catherine left the room, Emily turned to her window, staring out at the darkening sky. In just a few days, everything would change. There would be no going back. She took a deep breath, pushing down the last vestiges of doubt and remorse. She had made her choice, and she would see it through to the bitter end. August 15th dawned bright and clear, a perfect summer day in Oak Ridge. For the Smith family, it was a day like any other. Robert headed to the hospital for his usual shift. Catherine had client meetings for her interior design business, Ethan had football practice, and Sophia was at her violin lesson. Emily spent the day in a state of heightened awareness, her nerves stretched to the breaking point. She went through the motions of her normal routine, helping out at the bookstore, running errands for her mother, all the while acutely conscious that these were the last normal hours her family would ever experience. As evening approached, Emily made a show of getting ready for a night out with friends. "Don't wait up," she called to her mother as she headed out the door, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her gut. Instead of meeting friends, Emily drove to a predetermined location where Jason was waiting. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of what they were about to do hanging heavy between them. "Are you sure about this?" Jason asked, breaking the silence. "We can still back out." Emily turned to him, her eyes hard. "No, we've come too far. We do this tonight." They waited until well past midnight, giving the Smith family time to settle into deep sleep. Dressed in dark clothing, with gloves and masks to obscure their identities, they approached the house. Jason picked the lock with surprising skill, a talent Emily had never known he possessed. As they entered the darkened house, Emily felt a surreal sense of disconnect. This was her home, filled with memories of birthdays and Christmases, family movie nights and Sunday dinners. And yet, in this moment, it felt alien and hostile. They moved silently up the stairs, Emily leading the way. She knew every creaky floorboard, every potential obstacle. They reached her parents' room first. Emily hesitated for just a moment before pushing the door open. Robert and Catherine Smith lay peacefully asleep, unaware of the danger that had entered their sanctuary. Emily felt a rush of something, Was it power? Revulsion? She couldn't quite name the emotion. Jason moved past her, raising the gun they had acquired for this very purpose. Two muffled shots rang out in quick succession. Emily watched as her parents' bodies jerked and then lay still. The room filled with the metallic scent of blood, and Emily felt her stomach lurch. There was no time to process what had just happened. They moved quickly to Ethan's room. The teenager stirred as they entered, his eyes widening in confusion and then terror as he saw the masked figures. Before he could cry out, Jason fired again. Sophia's room was last. The young girl was curled up with her favorite stuffed animal, looking impossibly small and vulnerable. For the first time, Emily faltered. "I can't," she whispered. Jason turned to her, his eyes visible through the holes in his mask. "We have to," he said firmly. "It's the only way." Emily closed her eyes as the final shot rang out. The next few hours passed in a blur. They staged the scene as they had planned, overturning furniture, breaking a window to simulate a break-in, taking valuables to make it look like a robbery. As dawn began to break, they left the house, carrying bags of stolen items to complete the illusion. They drove to a secluded area to dispose of the evidence, both of them silent, the magnitude of what they had done finally sinking in. As Jason began to dig a hole to bury their bloody clothes and the murder weapon, Emily sat in the car, her mind replaying the events of the night in vivid, horrifying detail. It was at that moment, as the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon, that they heard the sound of approaching sirens. Emily's heart stopped. This wasn't part of the plan. They should have had hours before anyone discovered the bodies. "Jason," she called out in panic. "We need to go." But it was too late. Police cars swarmed the area, officers pouring out with guns drawn. Emily and Jason found themselves surrounded, their carefully laid plans crumbling around them in a matter of seconds. As she was handcuffed and led to a police car, Emily caught sight of her reflection in the window. She barely recognized the pale, wide-eyed girl staring back at her. In that moment, the full weight of what she had done came crashing down upon her. She had destroyed everything: her family, her future, her very soul, all for a misguided dream of freedom and wealth. The last thing Emily saw before being placed in the police car was Jason, his face a mask of fear and defeat. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Emily knew that the love she thought they shared had been nothing but a toxic, destructive force that had led them both to ruin. As the car door slammed shut, Emily Smith closed her eyes, knowing that the life she had known was over. The path ahead was one of judgment, punishment, and a lifetime of regret. The news of the Smith family massacre sent shockwaves through Oak Ridge and beyond. As details of the crime emerged, a community that had once looked up to the Smiths with admiration and envy now reeled in horror and disbelief. Detective Sarah Reeves, who had been first on the scene that fateful morning, found herself at the center of a media storm. Journalists from across the country descended on the quiet suburb, all clamoring for details about the gruesome crime and the seemingly perfect family that had been destroyed. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," Reeves told reporters at a press conference a week after the arrests. "The level of premeditation, the cold-blooded nature of the killings, and to think it was orchestrated by their own flesh and blood. It's beyond comprehension." As the investigation unfolded, the full extent of Emily and Jason's plan came to light. Detectives discovered detailed notes outlining their scheme, hidden in a secret compartment in Emily's bedroom. The notes revealed not only the murder plot, but also their plans for the future, how they would invest the insurance money, where they would travel, the new identities they planned to assume. It was chilling, Detective Holloway later recalled. These kids had their whole lives ahead of them, and instead they chose to throw it all away for what? Money? Some twisted idea of freedom? It's a tragedy all around. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Why? How could Emily Smith, by all accounts a model daughter and student, have orchestrated such a heinous crime against her own family? Psychologists and true crime experts weighed in, offering various theories. Some pointed to the pressure of being raised in such a high-achieving family. Others suggested that Emily might have been suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness. But for those who knew the Smiths, none of these explanations seemed sufficient to justify the magnitude of the crime. I keep replaying every interaction I ever had with Emily, said Mrs. Thompson, the Smiths' neighbor, trying to see if there were signs, anything I missed. But she always seemed so normal, happy even. How do you hide that kind of darkness? As the case moved towards trial, public fascination with Emily and Jason only grew. Their story became the subject of countless news specials, true crime podcasts, and even a hastily produced made-for-TV movie. Everyone wanted to understand what could drive two young people to commit such an unthinkable act. For Emily and Jason, reality was setting in. Held in separate facilities, they were no longer the confident, love-struck teens who thought they could outsmart the world. Jason, facing the prospect of life in prison, quickly turned on Emily, claiming she had been the mastermind behind the entire plot. She had me under her spell, he told investigators in a tearful confession. I loved her so much, I would have done anything for her. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Emily, for her part, remained largely silent. Her court-appointed lawyer advised against making any statements, but those who interacted with her described a young woman who seemed shell-shocked, as if she couldn't quite believe the turn her life had taken. As the trial approached, the prosecution built what seemed to be an airtight case. The physical evidence was overwhelming, and with Jason's confession, there seemed little doubt about the outcome. The only question remaining was whether Emily would face the death penalty, a punishment that many in the community were calling for. In the end, both Emily and Jason were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, in delivering the sentence, spoke of the heinous nature of the crime and the need to send a strong message to society. The court cannot fathom the depth of depravity required to murder one's entire family in cold blood, the judge said, his voice heavy with emotion. The defendants have not only destroyed the lives of Robert, Catherine, Ethan, and Sophia Smith, but they have also irreparably damaged countless others, friends, neighbors, and an entire community that will forever be haunted by this senseless act of violence. As Emily was led from the courtroom, her face a mask of resignation, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Melissa, her once best friend, watching with tears streaming down her face. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Emily felt the full weight of what she had lost. Not just her freedom, but her entire world. The bailiff's hand on her arm urged her forward, away from the life she had known, and towards a future defined by concrete walls and iron bars. Emily Smith, once the golden child of Oak Ridge, was now nothing more than another statistic in the annals of true crime history. 5 years after the Smith family massacre, Oak Ridge had changed. The Smith house, once the crown jewel of the neighborhood, stood empty and neglected, a silent monument to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Despite numerous attempts to sell the property, no one wanted to live in the house where such a horrific crime had taken place. Detective Sarah Reeves, now a captain in the police department, still found herself haunted by the case. You never really get over something like that, she confided to a colleague over coffee. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, seeing those kids' faces, wondering if there was something we could have done differently, some way we could have prevented it. In prison, Emily and Jason's lives had taken divergent paths. Jason, his boyish good looks faded by the harsh realities of incarceration, had become a model prisoner. He participated in counseling sessions, earned his GED, and even began mentoring younger inmates. Many saw his transformation as genuine remorse, while others viewed it as nothing more than a calculated attempt to improve his chances at a future appeal. Emily, on the other hand, remained an enigma. She rarely spoke to anyone, spending most of her time in the prison library or writing in a journal that she guarded fiercely. The few inmates who managed to get close to her described a woman consumed by regret, but whether that regret was for her actions or merely for being caught remained a subject of debate. Melissa Chen, Emily's former best friend, had left Oak Ridge behind, unable to bear the constant reminders of what had happened. She was now a social worker in Chicago, her experiences with Emily driving her to work with troubled teens. I think about her every day, Melissa admitted in a rare interview. Not the Emily from the trial, or even the Emily from that last summer. I think about the girl I grew up with, the one who used to make me laugh until my sides hurt. I wonder where that girl went and if there was anything I could have done to save her. The impact of the Smith tragedy extended far beyond those directly involved. The case had become a cautionary tale, studied in criminology classes and dissected by psychologists trying to understand the factors that could drive two seemingly normal teenagers to commit such a horrific act. Dr. Evelyn Martinez, a renowned forensic psychologist who had evaluated both Emily and Jason, published a book about the case titled The Price of Perfection: The Smith Family Tragedy. What we see in Emily Smith is a perfect storm of factors, Dr. Martinez wrote. Immense pressure to succeed, a budding personality disorder, and a toxic relationship that amplified her worst impulses. It's easy to paint her as a monster, but the reality is far more complex and, in many ways, far more frightening. Emily Smith could have been anyone's daughter, and that's what makes this case so haunting. The book became a bestseller, reigniting public interest in the case and sparking debates about parental pressure, mental health awareness, and the justice system's handling of juvenile offenders. For the residents of Oak Ridge, life had gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. But there was an undercurrent of change in the community. Parents were more vigilant, less likely to brush off troubling behavior in their children. The pressure cooker environment of academic and social success that had once been a point of pride was now viewed with suspicion and concern. Linda Thompson, still living across the street from the empty Smith house, summed up the community's feelings. We all learned a hard lesson. That perfect facade we all tried so hard to maintain, it doesn't mean anything. Now when I see my neighbors, we talk about real things, our struggles, our fears. We look out for each other's kids. It shouldn't have taken a tragedy like this to bring us together, but maybe some good can come from it after all. As for Emily Smith, her story was far from over. Locked away in a maximum security prison, she had become a subject of fascination for criminologists, journalists, and true crime enthusiasts. Requests for interviews poured in regularly, all of which she declined. But in the quiet hours of the night, as she lay on her narrow prison bed, Emily's thoughts often drifted to that summer day by the pool, when a casual conversation had set in motion a chain of events that destroyed everything she had ever known. In those moments, the weight of her actions pressed down upon her, a life sentence far heavier than any court could impose. The Smith family tragedy served as a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers lie not in the shadows, but in the hearts of those closest to us. It was a story of greed, misguided love, and the terrible consequences of choices made in the heat of youth. But above all, it was a story that would continue to resonate, a cautionary tale for generations to come about the true price of greed and the devastating power of unchecked ambition.